you better be able to pull a lot of strings, which reminds me, I need to call Paul Castro. Yeah.
And we'll hear the music, right? You got the code and all that? Okay. I never got it. Hello there. It's 3:00 on a Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Well,
hey.
Look who it is.
Wow, I stumbled upon a committee hearing that's actually starting when it should start.
Where you been?
I'm telling you, man, I have been all over the planet. I was been in Austin, I guess, was it there last week? I lost track or whatever. So I was there Monday and Tuesday.
This is probably the first time, what, in 3 weeks you've done the live stream?
No. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. 3,
well,
4
I
weeks.
can definitely say last month. So I'm good
Yeah.
I'm good with that. So I just actually posted that we're going live after this god awful music. And on that as well. So last week I'm in Austin. So Monday was the good time credit bill.
Right. Explain that.
So right now, if you're convicted of a violent crime, you have to serve half of your sentence without any good time or earned credits.
That's the way it is
right now. So,
okay.
So the example that I used and that everybody's probably familiar with is what happened in the case of Paul Castro's son,
Right.
David, and what was known as the Astros road rage murder. So there was agreed upon plea deal where the defendant was convicted of murder and got 30 years. And the agreement under current statute is that offender would have to serve 15 calendar years before he's eligible for parole.
Right.
This bill would allow offenders like that to utilize good time credits.
Explain good time.
Good time, well, I'll explain it in New York street sense. You wake up and you breathe, you get good time. How's that?
I'm alive. It's a good time. It's a good day.
I'm not misbehaving. I get good time. So if you participate in work programs, treatment programs, vocational programs, you get credit for that. Right now in the state of Texas, nonviolent offenders can rack up good time credits, and that's used to speed up your parole eligibility.
And for a nonviolent offense, that I don't have a problem with that. To you?
No, it's always been that way. It changed, I want to say, in 1996. A lot of people. And another example of how it changed was you remember John Bice?
Yes.
Who was in what became known as the Montrose gay bashing case.
Right. Yeah. Broussard, Paul Broussard.
Was the victim,
right.
He got 45 years for murder in 1992, and he was eligible for parole after serving only 12 years minus good time, because that's how the statutes were. So this bill would allow violent offenders like the person that murdered David Castro to basically speed up parole eligibility in half. So 15 years right now would be 7 or 8.
Because once you add your good time.
Once you add your good time. So we went up there and testified against it. And basically the way I framed it was, and I framed it as a contract. Right now, everybody is under the same contract. And the contract, which the defendant also buys into, because the defendant knows what's on the table. He knows when he agrees to that plea deal.
If you said yes to 30 years, you know you're going to spend 15.
Right. And this bill basically would supersede a contractual agreement made by all parties as to how much time you have to serve before you have the possibility of being released on parole.
Would it be retroactive?
That's part of the problem with the bill. And I've told the supporters of this bill, and I've told them repeatedly.
Who's supporting it?
oh God, every possible criminal justice reform
Yeah.
agency in the world, prisoner rights organizations,
Right.
and rightfully so.
Yeah.
They feel that this is their opportunity to get their, family member, loved one out earlier than what was agreed to. And I told them, I said, look, if you remove the retroactive clause, you're going to have a better chance. You
Right.
can't go back and you're making advocates like me into a liar.
Right.
Because I'm telling families, take the deal, take the 40 years. We don't have to worry about it for another 20 years. And you want to come along and say,
Right.
we're going to change that. And I said, every time you put this bill up here, if you don't remove the retroactive clause, I will be up here and fight it.
That's kind of like go back to mandatory release.
Correct.
Right. It was.
That's a good way of framing it.
Yeah, because George W. Bush was the governor, and he wanted to. They wanted to.
So we had in Texas called mandatory release law. Any offender convicted between 1977 and 87, it didn't matter if you
What it was.
It didn't matter if you were a serial killer like
Killed 20 people,
Watts
right?
Or Janine Jones. It didn't matter. You got good time credits, and that meant you were going to be released under the mandatory law.
And in that situation, now back then, good time was just being there, right? I mean, you didn't have to really take part in anything.
You had to wake up every day.
Right, you had to be alive.
You got it. You got it.
And the way that worked was once the time you served and your good time equaled the amount of your sentence.
Like in Coral Watts, that cut a plea deal in which he confessed to 13 Houston area murders, but was suspected in over 40 nationally. Watts was actually eligible for release in 2006, so he would have done 24 calendar years of a 60-year sentence. But because of the good time credits, which are generally 2 days for every day served,
right,
or sometimes even 3 days, he would have racked up that many years, and then that would have meant automatic release. So in 1995, when George Bush ran for governor, one of his platforms on the campaign was to abolish mandatory release.
And for people that weren't around then, it was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, you're talking about killers, people that made headlines, crimes that made headlines. These people were just, okay, I'm done. I'm back in.
They were
what
we call the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that they'd been repeatedly denied parole because they were
right,
up for
that's
parole.
Right.
And the only reason they were getting out was because of this archaic, outdated law that went into effect. So if you were lucky enough to have committed your crime between 1977 and 87, you were coming out.
Right.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
And there was a time when I can remember doing stories with you when it was, even though it no longer existed, there were still people in the pipeline that they were getting out.
You remember David Port.
Right.
David Port, and you did a lot of stories with with the Schatz family.
Yes.
David Port was convicted of killing a 23-year-old postal worker.
She just shows up and he kills
delivering mail.
Yeah, she's doing her job, and the man just kills her.
And then he got a 75-year sentence, but because he committed the crime in 1986, I want to say, he racked up enough calendar time and good time. He was released on mandatory supervision. No ifs, ands, or buts. It didn't matter. So we ended up getting a bill filed, and we wanted to make that retroactive for all offenders. And we got it through the Senate, and all of a sudden we got waylaid by a little-known court known as the United States Supreme Court.
Darn.
that little court known as
those judges.
The U.S. Supreme Court said you can abolish mandatory release, you just can't do it retroactively. So we did abolish it, but for those cases still that are in the pool.
Well, so how do you feel about this one without? You don't want it to be retroactive.
I don't want it to be retroactive. I think as long as everybody's on the same playing field, then we're in better shape. Do I think it'll ever pass? No, not under this current administration. Is it worthy of debate if you remove the retroactive clause and make it for any offenders after committing a crime after a certain time period? I think as everybody agrees to that, what you'll probably end up doing is getting a longer sentence.
Right. Yeah.
To make the adjustment.
Yeah.
for that sentence but at least everybody knows going in
Right.
what's happening.
Now, there's two right now. There's two bills. One deals with murder and capital murder trials, taking kind of a precedence or taking priority.
So today, Senate Bill 402, and I say today, and I say that judiciously because God knows when the hearing was scheduled for 10:30 this morning. My best guess is, all right, we'll make this a bet. I say it'll go on. The hearing will start before the 9 o'clock news. And Raymond's going to say, no, it's going to start after the 9 o'clock news. And I'll tell you what, we are going to bet a box of Cracker Jacks on that. Prize included.
Oh, wow.
Prize is included. You can see that. So the issue is whether that hearing will take place before the 9 o'clock or after the 9 o'clock news. But Senate Bill 402, which was sponsored by State Senator John Whitmire, we actually had a big press conference with victims' families because right now, and you've covered stories and covered a story on cases lasting 3, 4, 5 years before they go to trial.
Yeah.
It's just,
and these are murder and capital murder.
And a lot of these cases on murder and capital murder, they're out on bond.
Right.
And that's, we've never seen so many murder defendants, including capital, out on bond, and they just.
And that, even though the Texas Constitution, except for capital murder, judges don't have to let capital murder defense out on bond. I get it, where people are victims' families, how hurtful that would be. You know, your loved one is dead, and the person accused of taking their life is walking around like nothing ever happened, like life goes on.
The longer the cases remain pending, the easier it is to get somebody off, because the reality is, and I've seen this, where people disappear, witnesses disappear,
sure
die, evidence
people
something
happened. Right? Yeah.
We had a case. Hilda Bryan's son was murdered in the subway. Got a lot of national attention in 2017 because he was shielding her from a robbery.
Yeah.
They were working together. The robber ended up shooting and killing her son. And 5 years later, that case was dismissed. And the reason it was dismissed, couldn't find no witnesses.
Yeah.
Witnesses were gone. Without the witnesses, you have no case.
So if it becomes law, what would it mean?
So basically, it will put any defendant charged with murder and capital murder basically to the top of the chart.
Yeah.
To be actually tried. In other words, we can start getting these cases of the most violent offenders, murder.
But could you see where you might have defense attorneys making the argument, well, you're not giving me enough time?
Well, I think, it's where the buck is going to stop. Either now in this case, in other words, you're going to say, this is when we're going to trial. You need to be ready.
Right.
Either you're ready or you're not.
You can't be doing all this reset.
I need to find, his eighth cousin, living in Louisiana or Alabama. I can't find him. No, going in, we're going to try this case on this particular. So it'll be interesting to see if it does pass, which I'm assuming it is, because it had no opposition in the Senate. Nobody was opposed to it.
So now what has to happen?
Now it has to go have a hearing in the House, which is supposedly today.
Yeah.
And if it gets past that committee, then it'll be voted on eventually by the full House, and I'm sure the governor would sign it into law. But you're halfway home with it. But now the next big hurdle is the hearing today.
Right. And then there's another one.
What's the other one?
I forget. Did you already talk about it?
Come on. No, we haven't talked. Come on. We're going to wait here until you figure this out.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
I'll give you a clue.
Okay.
It's Senate Bill
23.
Nope. Yeah, actually, that is.
Okay.
You're right. Senate Bill 23. So Senate Bill 23. So right now, the issue, of course, is what? Go ahead.
No.
You got it. No, jumped in. Raise your hand. You
don't know. Give me a hint.
Guns. Bang. Firearms. Prison.
This is what it is. Now I know. Defendants that are convicted of a crime where they had a gun, a weapon, a gun, would have to serve have to serve a minimum of 10 years.
Right. So if I go and rob somebody or whatever right now, it's up, who knows what your sentence is going to get. This bill mandates that any defendant using a gun, a firearm, or machine gun in the commission of another crime, they will have to serve a minimum 10-year sentence in prison unless there's extraordinary circumstances. So
what do you think about that?
It's going to be it's really interesting because you have those who are supporting it, and the opposition is really interesting because normally you don't see, pro-gun people and criminal justice reformers on the same side.
Right.
But the pro-gun people are leery of people getting caught with certain scenarios and situations. It's a priority bill, so
that's kind of strange, bedfellows, right? I mean, when you're talking about, you've got people that are, for criminal justice reform, who basically kind of want everybody to be free. And then you've got the gun lobbyists who they're all on the same side.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can't script this. So it was voted out of the Senate 30-1. So it obviously had bipartisan support. The only senator who voted against it was a senator out of the Austin, Travis County.
And that was Senator Joan Huffman.
Huffman is the sponsor of the bill. So that too is being heard today. And, everybody, the gun violence is on everybody's mind right now.
I mean, look just what just happened, here.
If you look what happened, north to us.
Yeah.
With the guns, and you look at all the, the stories that we've put out, the last month with defendants being charged with possession of a prohibited weapon, machine guns that are getting out or
what does your gut tell you on that one? What do you think the odds are?
Oh, I'm going to say it's going to be a close call, but I think it'll get out of committee. So it's going to be difficult. Yeah. But then the real battle is going to be in the House. But if they can get out of committee, I believe it's going to pass. It's not going to be a unanimous slam dunk.
Right.
You're going to have opposition. But again, my thought is if you truly want to get at the core of gun violence, then you need to send a message that if you use a gun in the commission of a crime, you're going to go away.
Right. And it would you would hope that it would make some people think twice about it.
I think if right now everybody pretty much knows that's not happening.
Right.
And pretty much, the fact that you can get out on PR bonds or low bonds on gun cases, speaks volumes of where we are, where we're at. So it's going to be interesting dynamics. And, you can watch the hearings live whenever they begin. Don't ask me when. I have no idea. Tuesday, I was testifying because we had proof because I had a clock.
Yeah.
And it was 8:40 p.m. before I was able to testify on Senate Bill 1318, the bond reform bill and the constitutional amendment.
And the ones that we just mentioned, is there a date set for when they'll vote?
There's no date set. They won't vote on it.
So
if they're heard today, but
so
probably the week.
Anybody if you want to have your voice heard, get a hold of your state representative.
Well, you can actually go online. The good thing about the House, if you pull up the committee, and you just go to Texas Legislative Online.
Yeah.
And you pull up today's committee hearings, and you'll see House Criminal Jurisprudence, and you click on it. You can actually submit comments for or against any of the bills.
That's great.
And it plays a significant role in getting comments.
And another thing too, if you don't know who your state representative is, you just have to Google who was my representative.
Who's yours?
I think that's a personal question.
Not a personal question. You have 1 out of 26 chance of getting this right.
It's Ron Reynolds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold on. And I'm not telling people. I'm giving people. I'm making suggestions. I'm helping people. But like you were saying before, this is all kind of coming to a head now. The whole session is about over, right?
The end of May is pretty much, where everything either makes it over that hurdle. It's kind of like I said, whether the salmon make it and they give birth to little salmon,
Yeah.
which is new laws, or they ended up getting, taken out by a grizzly bear and eaten up, never to be seen again. That's kind of what this is right now. You're coming up the Snake River, the Columbia River.
This is it, right?
Like, I just got a little bit more to go. I got to get over this little rapid here and hurdle, but man, it's a tough hurdle to get over.
Right, and you were saying earlier too, like if you have a bill and you haven't had a hearing yet, it's done. You're not going to go anywhere.
You're done. You're over with. Try again, next time. And I've seen, a lot of stuff that I've done. I mean, I'll give you it took us 12 years, 7 legislative sessions. We started in 1999.
Yeah.
On a bill that we filed where you couldn't get probation if you were convicted of murder.
Yeah, it took that long.
It took 12 years, 7 legislative sessions.
How many laws would you say you've had a hand in?
27
Wow.
something, and well, it could go up on this right here as well. That shows you how old I am too. It shows you how
I see.
long I've been doing this.
That shows how effective you are, how needed you are. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Evelyn, Laura, Cynthia, Ruben, and Soda Pete. They're watching on Facebook, and we appreciate it.
Tonight.
You will not be on Breaking Bond, I promise. I don't know. Soda Pete, though.
That sounded like the character in The Outsider.
Right. Soda Pete might be. No, just kidding. Since you brought that up, tonight's Breaking Bond is one of those again that's probably going to make you mad. It's about 5 defendants who all get arrested for having a machine gun. Only one of them, this was 2 days ago, only one of them, as we speak, is still behind bars. We'll tell you what that's all about on tonight's Breaking Bond. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you.
Guess which one of these, and you'll win another box of Cracker Jacks.
How many boxes of Cracker Jacks do you have?
I don't know. I'm waiting for Raymond to give me some more.
The betting continues. Thank you. Be kind to yourself and everyone else. Bye.